Hello, good afternoon or good morning, depending on where you are. I'm excited for this next session, which is urine diversion systems in practice. We have 3 presenters in this session, 15 minutes per presenter, which means probably roughly 10 minutes per presentation is ideal, to leave 5 minutes or so for questions. I'll pop in at the 10-minute mark and let presenters know that you've reached that point. You can go a little further if you want to, but that just eats into the question time. So it's your discretion how you want to manage that. And then if anyone does get to the 15-minute mark, I'll politely let you know. But very excited to hear these three presentations around urine diversion systems in practice, looking at collection and treatment of urine in different manners. The first one is from Michel Riechmann, who is an environmental engineer with a passion for toilets. During his time at Eawag, he dedicated his research to on-site sanitation with a focus on research recovery from urine. He's a co-founder of the spin-off company Ogmo and board member of the German Network for Sustainable Sanitation, NetSan. He is also co-organizing the European Circular Sanitation Congress in November near Paris, where you all should come. So go ahead and take it away.
Thank you very much, Abe. I try to quickly share my screen.
Yes, we see that screen.
Can you see me full? Yeah, okay, super. All right, thank you. Thank you again.
Presentation. Oh, we're seeing it in presenter mode, it looks like, rather than presentation mode.
Is it in presenter mode?
So we can see your slide and also your notes.
Oh, okay. Let me try that again.
It's okay if you want to do it that way as well. I just wanted you to know.
What about now?
That's just the slide. Yep.
Okay, super. So hello again from my side as well. Michel Riechmann, and I'm today for the first time presenting Ogmo, our new spin-off company, after several years of research at Eawag. Only 1 month ago, we founded our company and are now, together with my colleague David Hasler and I, we are working full-time on this company. There's also a third founder, Kai Udat, who's still holding his research position and is guiding the research that we're still continuing. So I want to start with Ogmo, the name, because it explains a bit where we are heading. Ogmo stands for off-grid and modular sanitation. And this is also a bit the guiding principles that lead our company and our research before. Yeah, there we go. I want to jump in with a little problem description. Everybody knows that, like, at the current system, we are having far too much water consumption, 15,000 liters per year per person. On the same time, at least in Switzerland, to 100%, we are dependent on external fertilizer imports. We have some sanitation systems that are on the urge to work on this, but these are sometimes also have their troubles. You have to manually empty them. You have long time for service. So we came up with a system, like a treatment system for urine for now, but we want to extend the portfolio that works on site and solves several problems at once. So we not only want to treat the wastewater, but we want to see the whole as a mining system and close the circle of value creation locally. For this, at Eawag, we developed the nutrient harvester, which is a urine treatment system that works on site and is based on different treatment steps. First, there's a stabilization, and then there's a concentration and water recovery step following. I have talked about the detailed process so much, so I will skip this for now and rather focus on a bit more on the high-level guiding points that we have in the company. So we have 5 main principles that guide us along, which is the first, modular technology. So we have an on-site treatment technology for urine treatment and volume reduction. The modularity is for once meant we can combine this urine treatment module as it is stacked like in a frame of in the size of an IKEA shelf. We can combine this with existing pieces technologies or as well water treatment technologies. But there's also an internal modularity where I will dive into a bit more later on. Then the second principle is the system is completely automated and connected, meaning that we have a process monitoring and a control with remote access in the unit, so we can actually auto-control it from everywhere. We don't have to always go and have service on site, but we can guide service on demand. It also works plug and play, meaning it fits perfectly with waterless urinals, as there's no additional side stream we need to treat. But it also is a physiochemical process where we don't have any biology to care about, so we can plug it off at any time if we don't need it, so we can very much adjust to the needs on site. Another very big advantage is that we have no excavation works, as the whole technology is overground, and excavation works is often the main cost that we have if we have to implement an on-site treatment technology. And finally, there's resource recovery. So we're producing a fertilizer from an unused waste stream. In this case, it's a dried urine fertilizer based on nitrogen in the form of urea. Of course, it also has all the other nutrients present in urine, like phosphorus and potassium. We also produce a service water on site due to the condensation in the system, which then can be used for irrigation or other secondary uses. The system is compatible with different kind of interfaces. So we have the option of waterless urinals, but also dry separating toilets or flush separating toilets. And now I dive a little bit more into the internal modularity that I've mentioned before. So the entire system itself can be applied as a whole, but it is made out of different modules. So there's the stabilization module, there's the treatment, the concentration module, and there's the water recovery module and the control module. So all these modules can have one size or the other. As you can see on this picture, for instance, we can change the buffer tank and the stabilization tank according to special needs at different settings, and can assemble the different parts in a different manner according to the context. What we can also do is use these single modules independently of the entire system. So we can either, as before, applicate the complete treatment train, but we can also use single modules for specific use cases, such as only volume reduction. We can use only the stabilization if we have, for example, we need to have the stabilization very close to the toilet, but we have a long piping system where urine might be degraded, and then we can combine it with a larger treatment facility, for instance. But we can also use the control and monitoring unit that's very independent from the type of system. We can use it with a wastewater system. We can also use it with any other decentralized system that needs to be monitored and controlled. The last branch in our new company is that we also do engineering as a service. So from ideation and concept conceptualization to development and testing of functional prototypes and coordination for field testing campaigns and customized process controls and data acquisition. So if the product-based approach, I mean, we're still in a start phase, if that is not applicable, we can always set a focus on the customers in more detail, or even develop other treatment systems. Like, for instance, we have a contract now to develop a pieces transportation unit. That's an example. The markets that we are tackling at the moment are public toilet and off-grid housing. This is very niche markets that we identified that are quite possible for us to tackle in Switzerland and in Central Europe. On the long run, our aim is to provide sanitation infrastructure for areas where in general infrastructure is very low, and we can basically leapfrog the system that we currently have in Central Europe, in the US, with the canal-based and flush water-based system. This is a little bit a mapping of our current activity. So we have 2 running field tests at the moment, and we have a new project coming up very soon. And then we have a couple of demands that are mapped here as well. I want to now focus on 2 projects a little bit further. There's one public toilet with the city of Zurich, and then there's another field trial with Labeur and Urimat in a private or semi-private setting. And with those nice pictures, I want to finish. This is the pilot test in a stationary public toilet. We use a stainless steel urinal and then have our technology as a whole implemented in the service room behind. This is very comfortable because we have a lot of space here. And in contrast, this is a mobile version of a semi-public toilet. So this is an association for circular economy that does events and different workshops at their site. And here we built the whole toilet into a container, and we use an all-gender urinal that was designed in Switzerland 2 years ago and is now commercialized by Urimat. And in the back end, we have our system again. And with this, I want to stop, and I'm happy to answer questions if there are. And if anybody is interested in collaborating, please contact me either via email or via LinkedIn or through our website.
Wonderful. Thank you very much. Thank you for that presentation. That's very, very impressive, the modularity and the innovative aspects to that system. We have a few questions here in the chat coming through. One is from Jeff Mylander of what is the safe external operating temperature range for the mobile devices?
That's a good question. So as we have I didn't talk too much about the technology now, which is a bit a pity now, but we have a closed loop system. So we are a bit independent of external temperature. That's giving us the disadvantage of using a bit more energy for the water recovery and this system part. But this allows us to be independent of outwards temperature. The tough test, I have to say, we are doing now because it's getting cold and it's getting winter in Switzerland. So we're seeing already that temperature still has an influence because we haven't yet properly insulated it. That's probably something we have to do. But in theory, it's independent from the outside.
Great. Another question is, what nitrogen recovery efficiency are you seeing?
So we're seeing, we did a test in the lab not too long ago with a full setup, and we're seeing quite high recovery rates. So there's almost 98% nitrogen recovery in the form of urea mainly, and a bit of ammonia.
Great. And what is the cost of the mobile system?
So as we are still in pilot phase at the moment, it costs us at around 18,000 per unit. Yeah, but we're working on making it cheaper. But that's the overall cost for the entire unit. And then depending on the case, we can see what's needed and adjust the price according to the submodules used.
Mm-hmm. And did you say 18 or 80? I couldn't quite hear.
18.
18. Great.
Yeah.
Great. And will this system be available in the US?
At some point, I think so, yes, because the US is also quite an interesting market with a lot of decentralized housing, but it's not on our focus at the moment. For us, it's important to focus on a reachable market and to develop the systems and get rid of the child diseases, let's say. And it's easier to do it close to our doorstep than like now already exporting it to countries far away.
Great. And one final question. Someone remarked, I noticed the two pilots you showed appear to be urinals. What's the reason for that?
So the reason is simple. It's a urine treatment system. So urinals is the easiest to collect the urine. But the second field site, we are actually just working on implementing an ecodomio toilet as well, where we then have a feces treatment as well with vermicomposting and the separated urine stream from the toilet. It was basically convenience that it's easier for us to test or start testing like this.
Great, wonderful. Thank you so much for your presentation and all those answers. Curious to watch how this develops moving forward. Our next presentation is from Philippa Parry from the UK. This is challenges around a mobile centralized urine to fertilizer system. And by way of introduction, Philippa Parry is a senior bioprocess engineer at NPK Recovery, where she leads the development of innovative systems for nutrient recovery and urine to fertilizer conversion. With a background in novel bioreactors and process design, she focuses on translating laboratory research into practical, decentralized technologies that support circular resource management. So please take it away.
Hello, everyone. I'm just going to quickly share my screen. Hopefully that has worked.
Yes.
Amazing. Great start. So yes, thank you for that great intro. I am Philippa Parry from NPK Recovery, and I am shockingly going to talk about urine to fertilizer, what we're all here to hear about, and particularly around the challenges related to our mobile nutrient recovery system that we've developed at NPK. So to start with, being as it's our first kind of time talking at this conference, I would love to explain who we are as a company. So we were founded in September 2023, and we make up a team of 7 scientists, engineers, and facilitators that kind of make it all happen, with our primary goal being waste less and reuse more. With that, intention in mind, we have been primarily grant funded up until this point, which has led us doing various different aspects of research within that, both in regards to removing or minimizing the amount of air pollution coming out of fertilizer, as well as how to best manage animal manure. But throughout the whole time, a big key focus for us was human urine to fertilizer and how to most efficiently do that. For us, that journey began early 2024 when we started a series of feasibility studies testing out all those different techniques that many of people have discussed today, and doing preliminary kind of lab scale testing to see which ones were most achievable for us as a team. This led us kind of looking into both the struvite pathway as well as bioreactors. By late 2024, we decided to go down the bioreactor route just purely because of the expertise in the team at the time. I had recently joined as a bioreactor kind of specialist, and our lead scientist at the time was a microbiologist by trade. So it just worked best for the expertise that we had within the team. Based off that, then we were able to generate a load of mini bioreactors to basically start optimizing and testing various different protocols for turning the urine into fertilizer. From that, we were able to produce a small amount of volume, which we could then use in pot trials at the Royal Agricultural University here in the UK. That was extremely beneficial to us as a small team because it allowed us to use their plant science knowledge and that academic rigor to really create a robust set of results, proving the proof of concept of our fertilizer and the benefit that it could have to plants. So that took us to 2025. Early 2025 was extremely busy because not only was our pot trial extremely successful, which led to us wanting to do a field trial, but we also got contacted by a company to create a pilot. So to discuss the field trial first, we decided to try and manufacture enough fertilizer in order to test out in wheat fields up at the UK Agri-Tech Centre. This is a research institute here in the UK that specializes again in basically taking products that are very much in the R&D phase, proving the proof of concept, farmer engagement. And so they were a huge benefit to us in understanding what we need to do with our product to make it better or to prove that it works to the people that it matters. And then again, at that time, we had done a piece at the BBC just discussing our kind of technology, and a festival here in the UK had seen that and was really interested about having a pilot on their site that summer. So being the only engineer at the company at the time, I was like, this might be a tight turnaround, but we tried our best to make it work. And we started designing and building of early 2025 to try and deploy our first mobile system then in the summer of 2025. So going to that, it was, hugely exciting for us, and we were really proud of what we managed to produce. We made it mobile, we got it to site, it could fit on the back of a trailer. It was also chemical free, which is a big goal of ours, and we were really proud of that. So overall, the system had over 5,000 litres of bioreactor capacity. Its downstream was 20 litres per hour. We also had a completely automated kind of monitoring system, which allowed for automated urine addition and pH control. And to sum it up, really, we managed to achieve and design this and build it within the space of 4 months. Now, that is not actually a humble brag. It's to highlight the fact we have definitely not solved all the challenges surrounding urine to fertilizer. And that's what I primarily want to base this presentation on. Being newer to the space than some of the companies talking today, I would love to just kind of share our challenges and open the floor to then any suggestions and ideas. I know lots of people have been super collaborative already. So yeah, going on to the fun challenges we faced. The first one was even getting there. So if you have not worked with bioreactors before, our bacteria that we were using, which is AOB and NOB bacteria, is very traditionally used in wastewater treatment to handle nitrogen. But obviously in urine, that nitrogen load is a lot higher. And so you have to acclimatize that bacteria to that state. With that being the case, we couldn't necessarily get bacteria closer to site. We had to transport our acclimatized bacteria over that distance. And simultaneously, that bacteria needs oxygen to stay alive. So we couldn't necessarily just concentrate it all up and take it with us in small volumes. It needed to stay suspended in a liquid in order for the oxygen, dissolved oxygen, to maintain the bacteria and not to cause it to become anoxic. So that will be a challenge that we are looking into, is how can we concentrate and keep the viability of our bacteria alive whilst traveling distances and going to different festivals across the UK. This is extremely important because a few of you have kind of discussed that concentration piece is really vital, because transporting urine around is not necessarily as environmentally friendly as we want it to be, with 98% of it kind of being water. Lugging water around in large tankers and trucks just isn't something that we really want to be moving forward with. I just touched on it there about the bacteria acclimatization, but again, that was a huge challenge for us, because it takes a series of days and weeks to kind of acclimatize that bacteria to a urine-based feedstock. And so when we arrive on site, we want to be processing thousands of liters, ideally, every day, because festivals are literally cities that pop up over a weekend. But we can't obviously be doing that on our site in Bristol. So we really need to look at how best we can ramp up and slow down our bacteria without losing all the, growth and proliferation of quite slow growing bacteria that these are. So we'd love to hear any kind of bacteria knowledge around that area. Continuing on from there, the bacteria just keep on giving us challenges, don't they? And that comes with also the stability of that bacteria. So as I mentioned, we have two different types of bacteria that are kind of working symbiotically in these bioreactors, NOB and AOB. And you'd hope they would be fairly similar, which they are to an extent, but AOB is extremely more robust than NOB, which is a lot more vulnerable to changes in its environment. And as a result, you can create this instability within the population. So if we have any kind of, for example, transporting it across the country, any kind of changes like that impact the NOB a lot more. And what happens is if AOB has begun to proliferate and functions much faster than the NOB, it can create huge kind of amounts of nitrite, which is the foundation, which is the byproduct of AOB's activity. This nitrite builds up and not only inhibits the NOB, but can also kill both species and end up with your bioreactor dying, and you ending up with a load of nitrite, which is useless to plants and also has killed your bioreactor. So maintaining that stability is definitely a challenge we want to work on. And then we finally come to one challenge, which I'm sure everyone's kind of come up against in various ways, which is the energy requirement. For us at MPK, with the short time frame that we kind of had, we did not have a chance to really look as much into the downstream as we obviously would have liked. And for us, evaporation of water was by far the easiest kind of method for us to implement at the time. But we didn't have any kind of heat recovery in place. And so it was quite unsustainable to just evaporate huge quantities of water without, a more sophisticated system to recover that heat. So I'd love to hear more about alternative technologies or heat recovery technologies that people are using elsewhere, whether membranes are a no-go zone. I'd love to know if anyone's kind of had any experience with that. But yeah, those are our main challenges that we faced, and that really sums up my presentation. So I'd love to answer some questions and also maybe get some answers. And if we don't go through it all today, please feel free to contact me at Philippa@mpkrecovery.com.
Wonderful. Thank you, Philippa. That was very interesting. We don't have questions in the chat yet, so I'm going to jump in with my own question.
Okay.
I was curious, you were doing those bioreactor experiments in the lab with a bunch of different reactors, and I wondered what innovative things you were trying, or or what you learned through those experiments in terms of nitrifying urine through biological processes.
Yeah, there was a few different kind of experiments that we tested. Obviously, I'm more on the engineering side than I am the science side. But from what we were kind of testing at the time was different kind of loading strategies. How much urine can you add before you spike it too high that they didn't handle it and ended up causing like immediate death? The amount that you could add at any one dosing period, how long can you leave it without dosing, all various kind of aspects like that to see how they would handle it in larger bioreactors, as well as the amount of air that they would need. This was quite a challenge because we found that it needed quite a lot of air in these smaller ones because it was relying on a lot of the mixing. And then once we translated that to the bigger reactors, we actually created almost too much air that the turbulence was also irritated to an extent, not an ideal scenario for the bacteria to be in. So yeah, scale always comes with some interesting challenges that you're never quite expecting.
Great. Yeah, and speaking of that, that challenge of managing the bacteria, a question came in: can you collect on site and then do the bioreactor process back at your central location, presumably to keep your process more stable?
Yeah, we definitely could do that, but when we did some LCA, some life cycle analysis of urine to fertilizer right at the beginning of the project, and the huge aspect of that was like, if you transport urine basically anywhere, I think has a 10-mile radius before it then becomes less environmentally friendly than just putting the urine into wastewater treatment. And so we didn't want to start that kind of process of it coming to us and then it not having the environmental impact we were desiring. So hence the portable system became a high priority for us.
Great. Another question: what is the origin story of NPK recovery? What inspired you to get started?
Well, I guess it's more normally, obviously, most people spin out of universities and stuff like that. It turns out our director is fantastic at writing grants. So she had a company beforehand who would write grants for various startup companies. And then, one day she was just like, this seems like a huge waste, and was really thinking about it. I think she had like seen some stuff that the Rich Institute had published and everything. And she was like, well, actually, I've written so many grants for all these great startups. Why don't I start my own? So yeah, she got us our first really big grant and then began hiring parts of the team. So hence why we're still very fluid in our direction, because we're all learning. It hasn't come from a 3-year, 4-year PhD or anything like that. It's very much like all of us kind of growing at the same time with the company, which is very fun and exciting.
Great. Another question is the 5,000-liter reactor completely automated?
Yes, so it was 5,000 liters of available space, but we had it split across 5 different IBCs to try and see if different reactors were acting differently and if we had an issue that one would be able to be shut down. And they were completely automated with urine additions and pH control and everything. And then we did have a valving system, which unfortunately did break just before we went. But it is now, we're now integrating automated valves as well to be able to draw liquid off and take it to our downstream. So yeah, that is all implemented now and is fully automated, which is very exciting.
Great. Okay, one more question is about the evaporation. You managed to evaporate 20 liters per hour. Can you talk more about that?
Yes, I can. It was not, I would say, the most high-tech approach. We were working, again, with grants. You work on a much smaller budget. So we had a series of basically nozzles atomizing the fertilizer with a dehydration kind of system, and it sprayed it onto what is actually like fly meshing that people would put on their doors, stainless steel kind of fly meshing that stops insects coming into your home. We coiled that up nice and tight, atomized it, and basically created a webbing kind of technique to wet all the mesh, creating a really high surface area to then flow hot air through. We would love to have then heat recovered that hot air and brought it back into the system. At the time, we couldn't find kind of a heat pump technology that would really work for recovering that heat, and that's something we'd like to look for in the future to it would drop our energy demand significantly if we could move away from potentially that technology.
Wonderful. I see a follow-up comment from Jenna Senecal, who asked that question for further conversation.
Oh, lovely.
Great. Well, thank you, Philippa. That was a really interesting presentation, and I hope the development continues to move forward with that. We hear more about it next year at the summit.
Yes.
Let's go now from Europe to Australia. Veera Koskue is here today, impressively, because I think that it is just crossed 5 o'clock in the morning for you, I believe. and you've been attending for a while now, watching presentations. So that's some dedication. This next presentation is called Pilot Scale Nutrient Recovery from Urine Using the UGold Technology. So Dr. Veera Koskue works as a postdoctoral research fellow in the Department of Chemical Engineering at the University of Melbourne, Australia. She has several years of research experience on nutrient recovery from different wastewaters using bioelectrochemical and electrochemical methods. She is currently involved in the Interdisciplinary Nutrients in a Circular Economy, acronym of NICE, Industrial Transformation Research Hub, funded by the Australian Research Council and industry partners. So Veera, if you want to bring up your screen there, you can take control. You can see that. And there you are. Great. Go ahead. Oh, and Veera, I should mention, we do not have a hard stop at 1:20 as the program says. We can go a bit over, so you'll get the same amount of time as everyone else has been doing. So don't feel rushed. We can't hear you though. Still can't hear you, and you're not muted, but your audio isn't working. Maybe you need to choose a different audio input.
While Veera looks for her works on the audio thing, this might be a good moment to do a quick summit group photo. So Veera can have some time to work on the audio there. But if everyone would just for a moment unmute your video, I'm gonna take some quick screenshots. It's our little annual summit tradition of doing a big group photo for the Zoom crowd as well. So give me your best cheeses. Or peas, and I'll go through and take some photos. Yay! Thank you everyone for joining us. It's so lovely to see all of your friendly faces. Delightful. Thank you. Yay! Beautiful. All right. Wonderful. Thank you.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, we do. Congratulations,
fantastic.
you solved it.
Sorry about that. Of course, there's always a technical glitch. Great. Thanks, Abe, for the kind introduction, and yeah, good morning from Australia. As Abe mentioned, my name is Veera. I work at the University of Melbourne, and today I'll be talking about our efforts in scaling up our lab scale research into pilot scale trials with the technology we like to call UGold, which I'll be walking you through in more detail in a couple of slides. But I did just want to start by taking a moment to acknowledge the traditional owners of the land from which I'm joining today. So I'm currently in the unceded lands of the Wurundjeri Woiwurrung peoples of the Kulin Nation, and I want to just pay my respects to their elders past and present, and also acknowledge the First Nations Australians as the first engineers and the first custodians of the lands and water here in Australia. And as I mentioned in the introduction, I currently work under a research hub called Nutrients in a Circular Economy, or NICE. So just to give you an idea of the kind of research environment in which this project operates, this is a 4-year research hub, primarily funded by the Australian Research Council. We have 7 different university partners across Australia involved, and 20 or so industry partners. So it is quite a big consortium. And what we're kind of trying to capture here is the whole, just get my pointer out, the whole cycle from urine collection to then processing it, optimizing the fertilizers, and then actually using that fertilizer. So we have different partners focusing on different aspects. Personally, my project primarily looks at processing the urine, But of course, we are also involved in, or that involves collecting the urine in the first place, which is also what I'll be talking about today. And then we have other wonderful partners doing, for example, cultivation tests on the fertilizer we're producing to see how it actually performs on the field. And Rich Earth Institute is also one of the international organizations involved in this hub. So our technology we like to call UGold, that comes from urine is gold. It is a bioelectroconcentration technology, which may sound a bit fancy and scary, but I'll walk you through it. So essentially we're working with an electrochemical cell where we have bacteria catalyze the anodic oxidation reactions. So these green bits here symbolize bacteria. We have a 3-chamber setup. So in addition to the anode and cathode chambers, we've created a concentrate or recovery chamber in between of them using cation and anion exchange membranes. So these are semi-permeable membranes that only allow charged compounds to be transported through. We work with hydrolyzed urine. So after collecting the urine, we allow it to hydrolyze during storage, and that is to convert the urea in fresh urine into ammonium, because that is a positively charged cation, which we can then make transport through these ion exchange membranes. And thankfully, the other key nutrients we're interested in, which are potassium and phosphorus, obviously, are also present in their ionic forms. So with this technology, we're actually able to collect all 3 key nutrients into our liquid fertilizer concentrate through these membranes. What these bacteria here at the anode do is they convert some of the chemical energy in the organic matter in the urine into electricity, and that lowers the external energy requirement. So we do need to apply an external voltage, but it's fairly modest because some of the electricity is actually generated by the bacteria inside the reactor. And here are just a few key numbers we've been obtaining in the lab under optimized conditions. So nitrogen is our primary focus, and we've been getting recovery efficiencies up to roughly 70% at fairly reasonable rates, normalized to the reactor volume. And most excitingly, I guess, also managed to keep the energy consumption fairly low at 2 to 4 kilowatt hours per kilogram nitrogen recovered. In the lab, we've also carried out some preliminary tests to check for pharmaceutical and other kind of personal care product concentrations and what happens to them in our system. And we've actually found that the membranes particularly are quite effective as in blocking these compounds from entering the liquid product. So the gray bars here symbolize the removal efficiency or the retainment of these compounds by the membranes so that they don't end up in the liquid product. But this is also something we'll continue to look at in longer term experiments with the pilot that I'll now be talking about. I won't talk about the kind of technological developments in much detail. I'll just kind of give you a quick timeline of what this has looked like. So it was around 8 years ago that the first kind of proof of concept paper was published. And then a few more years of optimization in the lab to get to those high recoveries, low energy consumptions. And then in more recent years, we've then focused on solving some remaining technical and operational challenges. Maybe also, or I could relate to the previous presenter talking about working with bacteria and also these kind of harsh conditions where you have really high ammonia concentrations, which can be toxic to a lot of different bacteria. One of the focuses was from a paper from last year, was on finding a startup strategy that would allow us to enrich a functioning anaerobic biomass quickly, even under these harsh undiluted urine conditions. And this is what our research has looked like in the lab scale. The reactor volumes are just under 1 liter. We've been able to treat roughly 2 liters per day of urine. And now, with the help of our industry partner, HHIA Technologies, we've scaled that up to a pilot scale system that will be operating at maybe primarily 40 to 50 liters per day, but we expect it to be able to tackle up to 100 liters per day. And we've essentially had this reactor ready to go for the past couple of years now, but we've actually run into the challenge of finding a source of urine to facilitate these trials that I'll just touch on. So that to give you an idea of what the Australian context has been in this space. So one of our other partners is Urban Utilities, the big water utility in the Brisbane area in Queensland. And with them, our first goal was to find a public toilet block and retrofit that with urine diverting toilets and also a urinal, and then have the pilot system operating on site next to the toilet block. But here we ran into some regulatory challenges with the Queensland plumbing and drainage regulation. So in the state of Queensland, plumbing is quite heavily regulated, and essentially because the urine diverting toilets would have required separate plumbing for the urine, which would have then been directed through our system before going into the sewer. Well, the fertiliser obviously would have been collected, but then the effluent from our system would have still gone to the sewer. That was not allowed. All of the sewage is required to directly go into the sewer, including the urine. And so we engaged with the Queensland state government for the past 3-4 years now, trying to get them to amend this regulation to facilitate the installation of these toilets. And I am very excited to report that as of June this year, this amendment finally went through. And so now urine diverting toilets are essentially allowed in the state of Queensland in Australia. So all the states have their own regulations, and this is still state level legislation, but hopefully that will also kind of pave the way to a more national or federal level recognition. So while we were waiting for that amendment to come through, we then had to look for other options, and we found a new collaborator for our project called Composting Toilet Systems, who operate here in Melbourne, and we're in the state of Victoria. And they have come up with their own urine diverting toilet tube design that they use in their mobile composting toilet designs, but also in permanent fixtures. So one of their key operations is to service a bunch of music festivals and other public events across Victoria and some also in New South Wales with composting toilets. So at a couple of large festival sites, they have built these fixed fixtures, and then they also operate these mobile toilets. And they're able to separate the urine from the solid matter. And currently they're looking, or they are composting the solid fraction, but they haven't had any technology to treat the urine with. So that has just simply gone down the sewer. So they were also quite excited to partner with us and trial our technology for treating that urine fraction that they currently don't really know what to do with. And here in the Southern Hemisphere, we're obviously headed towards summer, so the festival season is just about to start. I think one of the big festivals that composting toilet systems is going to is next week. So we expect to start getting urine very soon. They have told us that they estimate to collect up to 30,000 liters over the summer months. And so, as you can see, our pilot setup is inside a shipping container, which is a very simple, not a modular design. So this is just a first stage, obviously, where we try the system in a larger scale, but we've also already sought additional funding, which hopefully, if we get it, would allow us to then also develop this into a more sophisticated and modular setup. And here you can see some of our team. We just had a new student, Vanya, join us, who will be primarily operating the system, and this is Stefan, our supervisor here. And with that, I'd like to thank you for your attention. Please do give us a follow on the project website or on LinkedIn. I think there's a lot of very exciting stuff happening, and we'll be reporting all our findings there. Thank you very much.
Thank you. That's wonderful. It's so good to hear about the regulatory progress. I know that's been a sticking point for years now, so that's really a huge accomplishment. Congratulations on that.
Thank you.
While questions come in by chat, I have a question to start off about the membrane process or the electrochemical process. I know that some systems have a issue with creation of chlorinated disinfection byproducts because of the chlorine in urine. And is that an issue you've encountered, and is there anything you've had to do to overcome that?
Not in our system, because the potentials, the electric potentials we're operating at are fairly low. Also, the current densities we're able to get are low compared to a purely electrochemical system. So the potential of the anode isn't really high enough to cause those kinds of reactions to occur. So that hasn't been a problem. So definitely, we have other people in our group looking at purely electrochemical approaches where they operate with much higher potentials and currents, and that definitely is something to consider. But with us, that has not been a problem.
Great, that's good. Thank you. Another question is, what is the mechanism for removal of pharmaceuticals?
As I mentioned, it's primarily the membranes work as a physical barrier between the urine and the product. So it's both size exclusion, because the membranes, the pore size is in the nanometer scale. So that already excludes some of the larger pharmaceutical residues simply by size. And also the fixed charge of the membranes, because one of them has a positive charge and one of them has a negative charge that also tends to repulse compounds that then have a similar charge. Also, there is, that is also something for us to look more into, but there is some evidence that the bacteria at the anode might be able to also, to a certain extent, degrade those compounds. So I guess I should clarify that our goal is not necessarily to remove the pharmaceuticals and other micropollutants from the urine per se. Our main interest is to prevent them from entering the fertilizer product, because then our effluent will still go through a traditional wastewater treatment process.
Mm-hmm. Great. There are two related questions. One is, what's the concentration factor you can reach? And the other is, what is the percent nitrogen in the product?
Yeah, great questions. We are able to get to roughly 3 times concentration, 3 to 4. So the final concentration of nitrogen is typically around 20 to 25 grams per liter, so 2 to 5%. And that is kind of the limit we reach here. So we've found that we can't really get past that concentration factor, because even though the membranes are what's the word? So even though the membranes are meant to only allow ionic transport through, there is some water also diffusing through the membranes because of osmotic and electroosmotic pressures. So the kind of higher the ion transport, the higher the water transport as well. So we do hit a plateau where we can't really concentrate further than that.
Okay, great. And then there's another question, I think, just to clarify where the contaminants go. Like, do they attach to the membrane, or are they all just can you explain, the fate of them, if any of them are stuck to the membrane, or if they all pass through the system?
Yeah, thank you. That, as I mentioned, we'll definitely keep looking into in more detail at the pilot. But in previous lab experiments with urine, and also I've done experiments with another type of wastewater too. It depends on the properties of the individual micropollutants as well. Some of them do seem to absorb in the system a bit more than others. So this could be either on the membrane or elsewhere in the cell. But most of them, I believe, just go through unless there is some degradation at the anode by the bacteria. Again, we don't really have a very high, we're not producing any radicals that would be oxidizing these compounds to a larger extent. But yeah, that is a mass balance for various micropollutants is definitely in the cards for the pilot as well.
Great. And then a final question is, how long do the membranes last? Do you have data on that yet?
Again, not really, or well, not conclusive. In the lab, we've been able to use a pair of membranes for over a year. So we actually see fairly little fouling or scaling of the membranes, which has also been quite interesting. Of course, because we use hydrolyzed urine, so most of the calcium and magnesium has already precipitated and doesn't really enter the system. So that helps manage the inorganic scaling. And supposedly maybe it is also the fact that we are operating at kind of lower currents than purely electrochemical setups. So then our transport rates or recovery rates are also a bit slower or lower. So maybe that helps manage the membrane or keep their integrity for longer as well. But that has been quite exciting and again is something that we'll be monitoring longer term with the pilot as well.
Wonderful. Well, thank you for that presentation and for being up and going so early in the morning and coherent as well. So
Thank you. I can see. I think the sun is finally starting to rise. The sky is turning a bit lighter blue now.
Wonderful. Well, thank you, Veera, and also thank you to Philippa and Michel. It was really wonderful to have the three of you on presenting your latest innovations